Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, potential names are popping up as far as who could be the next GM of the Silver and Black. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, December 19th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. Of course, if you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. We appreciate you, and we appreciate my man Ari. Does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good. And of course, without you, Raider Nation, there's no point for us to be on YouTube. So we definitely appreciate you in a major way. All the support of the show, all the subscriptions of the show, definitely appreciate it. If you give us 3 minutes or 33 minutes, whatever the case may be, it does not go for granted. So thank you so much. Can't say that enough. You want to hit up Ari on Twitter, you can, at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Get your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3. A lot of calls and texts. Going to try to get to as many as possible, squeeze them in segment number 3. Segment number 2, actually have a call that I want to separate and isolate because it has to do with Antonio Pierce and the way we evaluate him, the way we've evaluated him since he's taken over as the interim head coach on November 1st, to what we'll do throughout the course of the rest of the season, the next 3 games, and if they earn some postseason action, those games as well. And of course, when he sits down with Mark Davis and has his formal interview on can he get the job, can he not get the job, got a really good call that I want you to hear, and we want to talk about that in particular in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guarantee. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And there's some names floating around already that you may hear a lot about, or you may just start to hear when it comes to the open GM position. Of course, Champ Kelly is the interim GM right now, as Antonio Pierce is the interim head coach. They have to go through the proper interview process when it's all said and done, but they're holding down the position right now. Other guys and other names to pay attention to as far as it goes with the GM position. I actually received this message by DM on Monday saying, Bengals senior personnel executive Trey Brown is gaining momentum in league circles as a top general manager candidate for the upcoming hiring circle. Also, a couple more names to pay attention to go along with Trey Brown. Chiefs assistant general manager Mike Bergonzi and then 49ers assistant general manager Adam Peters are also viewed as top candidates. So there's 3 names right there: Trey Brown, Mike Bergonzi, and Adam Peters. Now, the thing with Trey Brown, again, Bengals senior personnel executive, he's actually a guy that's interviewed with the Raiders in 2019 and 2022. Obviously, he did not get the job, but he's a guy they're very familiar with. So he's expected to interview with the Silver and Black when the interview process opens up. And he is the guy that apparently is the top dog. He's the leader in the clubhouse, not for the Raiders job, but just for a top general manager position in the league. When they start with the hiring cycle, he's a guy to look for to come off the board sooner rather than later. He's really gained some momentum, some steam. So, again, he's Bengals senior personnel executive Trey Brown. My guy, Tristan Kuhn, who's really a good source of information as well, tweeted out that, again, he interviewed with the Raiders in 2019 and 2022. He's only 38 years old. He's been with the Eagles, the Patriots, and the Bengals, spent time with college and pro scouting departments, served as the GM of the Birmingham Iron and St. Louis Battlehawks, where both teams finished first in their conference. And if he's hired, he'll be the 3rd youngest NFL active GM. But that's just a little bit of background there on Trey Brown. Want to make sure to bring that to the table. I believe Champ Kelly, for many different reasons, is the leader in the clubhouse, including the fact that when he got hired as assistant general manager, I thought, wow, that's a big hire because he's a guy that's already qualified enough to have his own team. So I think that he's in a really good position. He's already been with the organization. He knows what the scouts are out there looking for. They know him, so it's not like he has to go into a new situation or they have to bring a guy in to go into a new situation. I feel as they're preparing for the offseason, they're preparing for the draft, they're preparing for free agency. He already has a leg up on these guys and a step in the right direction, the foot in the door because of the familiarity. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But again, they'll go through the process. Trey Brown, Mike Bergonzi, and Adam Peters. Those are 3 names to look for, and you'll hear, and I'm sure the Raiders will probably interview all those guys, but they'll interview others as well. I don't think it's going to be a quick hire. I don't think it's going to be something that you're going to just see a couple names roll through the Intermountain Health Performance Center. They interview them and then all of a sudden call it a day. I think they're really going to make an extensive search, and of course, with Mark Davis firing Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler first this year, firing them on Halloween, they have a step in the right direction. They already have their nets cast, and so they're already putting their list together and already deciding what they're going to do. And still, they have Champ Kelly and Antonio Pierce that they still have to interview. And obviously, they're having their on-job interviews as they go each and every day, already being there in the building. Also wanted to pass along some grades according to Pro Football Focus for the highest graded Raiders versus the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. And you can imagine when you win 63-21, you're going to have some guys that are rated pretty high. Jack Jones was the highest rated Raider according to Pro Football Focus grades at 94.2. Obviously, he had the pick 6. He's a guy that I think has an opportunity to really earn himself a nice little role with the silver and black, especially with his familiarity with Antonio Pierce. He's a guy that may get a little squirrely from time to time, but he's a guy that, as long as, like Antonio Pierce said, you hug him tight, he's gonna be that dude. He's gonna give you everything he's got out there on the field. I could appreciate that. Malcolm Kuntz was the second highest rated grader versus the Chargers, 91.6. And on top of that, he's recorded 4+ quarterback pressures in 5 straight games. I think Malcolm Kuntz is really starting to come on. I talked about him on Monday's show. You heard from him on Monday's show. He's got 4 sacks on the season, and he's a dude that's just being used to the best of his ability. The Raiders have identified what he does well and has put him in position to go out there and excel and succeed. And I think that that's a really good thing. His rookie year, he showed signs. You saw what he was able to do. Thought he was going to build on that his second year in the league. Obviously, that didn't work out. He was basically in Josh McDaniels' doghouse all season long, and now he's getting an opportunity to do what he does best. 4+ quarterback pressures in 5 straight games is nothing to shake a stick at. I mentioned it on Monday's show. If you can have Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz as bookends, and then you have a guy like Tyree Wilson in the middle, now you got yourself something, right? Similar to what Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin were supposed to be, right? When they signed Bruce Irvin as a free agent, he was supposed to be that complimentary bookend to Khalil Mack. Maybe now Malcolm Kuntz can be that real true bookend to Max Crosby. I really like what he's doing. Oh, speaking of guys that were graded high, how about Max Crosby? 90.7. He was third. Marcus Epps next, 89.8. And then Devontae Adams, 86.2. The coordinators are meeting with the media today. We didn't get an opportunity to catch up with Antonio Pierce on Monday. They pushed it back till Wednesday. That's his normal day, but normally it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But with the game not being played until Monday, they pushed back the coordinator meeting with Antonio Pierce Wednesday and Saturday. We're going to get the opportunity on Saturday to catch up with AP. But today, defensive coordinator Patrick Graham available in the Intermountain Health Performance Center around 11 o'clock. And then Bo Hardegree, the offensive coordinator, will be right after him. So around 11:15, but normally it's not that much of a gap in between. Usually it's like 11 and 11:05 or 11:07, something like that. It's pretty quick. You know, it always goes Patrick Graham, then Bo Hardegree, 2 guys, 2 coordinators, both are in the booth now. So I'm sure of a lot of the questions Hardegree will be about being in the booth. I won't be there. I got a meeting at the radio station, so don't have an opportunity to be there for that, but I will be there on Wednesday when we speak to Antonio Pierce. We'll do that on Wednesday and Saturday. And so there you go. Patrick Graham and Bo Hardegree both available today at around 11 or 11:15. That's what it's scheduled for. Again, they usually go a lot quicker than that. If anything good and big comes out of that, any big news from that, I'll definitely have it on the podcast coming up tomorrow. Coming up in segment number 2, going to talk about Antonio Pierce. You'll hear a call from Raider Kev and talk about the evaluation of Antonio Pierce and how we've evaluated him and how we should evaluate him moving forward. You'll hear that. We'll talk about it coming up in segment number 2 after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, Gametime. And if you're looking for some last-minute tickets, that's all right. You shouldn't have to worry about when you're going to buy your tickets to the next big event. And it could be any event. It could be a football game. It could be a comedy show. It could be some theater action. It could be a concert. Whatever the case may be, you can get those tickets, last-minute deals, killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Again, last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find, and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, and you get views from all the seats in the venue. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, everything you can imagine. They have. Right now, download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. The promo code is LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into a call from Raider Kev talking about the evaluation of Antonio Pierce, what he thinks it should boil down to when it comes to will he or won't he get the job. Really good call here from Raider Kev starting us off here in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Check it out.
Good morning, Q. This is Raider Kev. Apologize for any background noise. Listen, guy, I can't say it enough. Man, I really enjoy your show. But what I really want to get to, man, is the evaluation of AP. People are all over the place, depending on how, whether we win a game or lose a game. Raider Nation, that is not the way we should be evaluating this situation. We need to be understanding, is he a leader of men, and does his team respond to him? And the answer to me is obvious. Yes, he does. And yes, they do. It's plain and simple, okay? Look at how a team doesn't respond. They get blown out 21-63, okay? That's not responding, okay? So listen, these last 3 games, I think, are very important to continue to see the progress. My only question mark with AP, I have no question about him being a leader of men. I have no question about whether the team responds to him. My only question is, how well does he manage the game at hand? And he has to improve on that. He has improved, and I want to continue to see that improvement, okay? Once those are answered, this guy is our guy. We should not let the opportunity pass to let a leader like this leave our locker room. It would be a travesty. Now, I'm not saying he's the only person on earth could ever get us to where we need to be, but we have the guy in-house. And that's what we need to do, is keep him in-house. So that's my view about him. And listen, there's a comment on the last show that defensive-minded coaches don't win. Well, only 2 of the greatest are defensive-minded, and Bill Belichick and Parcells. Okay? So let's just put that to bed, okay? So listen, guy, again, I enjoy the show. Really appreciate you. And go Raiders.
Thank you so much for the call, my man. I appreciated you. And it's funny that you made that call because I wanted to speak on Antonio Pierce anyway. I felt like we had an extra day this week since the game's not till Monday. So I thought, you know what, this will be a really good time to talk about Antonio Pierce. And he's a guy that I've thought about quite a bit and just kind of thought about what he's done and what he's doing moving forward and how he's approaching this interim head coaching job and the fact that he obviously wants to get the job full time. And I love the way that you're breaking down how he should look or how he should be evaluated. It shouldn't just be based off of wins and losses. And I don't think it is based off just off of wins and losses. I'll tell you, and I said it right after the game, that Minnesota game, that 3-0 loss coming off the bye week, obviously that didn't help his chances. But I do think turning around 4 days later and putting the whipping stick on the Chargers the way that the Raiders did showed a lot in his development as a head coach. Hey, he's able to get that team to clear everything that they had going on Sunday and that loss to the Vikings, that embarrassing loss, and get revved up and ready to go for Thursday. On a short week, no players like the Thursday night games, and they went out there hair on fire and were out there to prove a point. Now I know the Chargers and their team quit, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and get too high on one win. But just knowing that he was able to get that team turned around and get them focused and prepared for this game on Thursday against the Chargers, I think that goes a long way. Now, obviously, the next 3 games are going to be pretty critical as well, right? How do the Raiders look over the next 3 games, right? Again, it's not necessarily wins and losses like you said, but how do they look over the next 3 games? Do they look prepared? Do they look like they're in position to win? Does it look like all the players are being used to the best of their ability? Like I mentioned, Malcolm Kuntz, is he being used the correct way? Clearly he is. All the guys that they have on the roster, are they being used as contributors, right? Are they helping this team look successful? You know, what does his in-game decisions look like? That's something that I've been very critical of since he's taken over the interim position, because it's not easy, the in-game decisions. It's just not. And that's why I could really appreciate the fact that he brought in Marvin Lewis, and the fact that he brought in, Tom Coughlin, and he brought in Adam Gase, 3 guys that have been there, done that can help him through that. You know, I mean, if he acted like he was the smartest dude in the room and he knew everything and, had his ego, couldn't check his ego at the door and say, oh, well, I don't need to be told it. You can't tell me nothing, like the previous coach did. That would go a long way. But for him to be humble enough to say, hey, man, I need a little bit of help with this. What do you think about my approach here? How could I do it? How would you do it? How have you done it for a very long time? I think that goes a long ways. I really do. So, again, in-game decisions, that's obviously a big deal. Does everything look like it's starting to slow down for him, right? Like making the decision to put Bo Hardegree in the booth, right? That was a decision that he made, and following the game on Sunday with the Vikings, he said all the coaches and players will be evaluated. Now, he didn't start Jimmy G. He, looked at Aiden O'Connell and tried to put him in a better position to succeed, and obviously Aiden had a really good game. He looked at Bo Hardegree, and he didn't take the play calling from him, but he moved him. He put him up in the booth, and for one game, had a really good performance as far as the offense goes. Now, how does that look in the next 3 games? Well, we'll find out, right? But you can see that he's making moves to try to put this team in the best position to succeed. So to me, that shows the game slowing down a little bit for him. And then again, going back to the fact that he brought people in that have been there, done that he's very close with, like he said, his resources, that says something to me. Every coach wouldn't have the ability to do that. Every coach wouldn't, their ego wouldn't allow them to do that, but he did. So, and on top of that, the final thing I got for Antonio Pierce and what I'm looking for is the fact that he's taken this opportunity so serious. He's not just trying to drive the bus. He's not just trying to, land the plane or guide it in and hope that he doesn't scuff anything up. Like, he's trying to win. He's trying to get these guys to the playoffs. He's trying to get these guys to play at the highest level of, their capabilities. Like, he's not just trying to, finish off the season and then go up into the offseason and go about his business and do whatever he wants to do. Like, he's trying to let it be known, like, hey, Mark, I can do this job. Hey, I got this. These guys will follow me. I'm going to help this team be a winner. And, the funny thing about it is, if you go back and look at the history of the Raiders, and I mentioned this before, but you look at the history of the Raiders, they've done pretty well when they've either promoted a guy or they had a guy as an interim head coach. They've done pretty well. Madden was the linebackers coach. Then he became Raiders head coach. Worked out pretty well. Tom Flores, wide receiver coach, then was a Raiders head coach. It worked out pretty well. Art Shell, offensive line coach, then an interim head coach, then a head coach. Also worked out pretty well the first time. Bill Callahan, offensive line coach, promoted to head coach after John Gruden got traded to Tampa Bay. It worked out for a while until it didn't. Right? I mean, he did get the Raiders to the Super Bowl. We all know how that shook out, but that worked out pretty well. Tom Cable, he was the interim coach after Kiffin got fired, and then he got promoted to head coach. It was okay, right? His record wasn't all that, but you could see the guys out there playing. Then Hugh Jackson gets hired to be the offensive coordinator and support Tom Cable, and he gets promoted to head coach after a season, and after one season, then he's out of there. But the Raiders were 8-8, and you could see that the team was trending in the right direction with Hugh Jackson. I remember when he got hired as offensive coordinator, I was like, yeah, he's going to be the head coach next year. Right? Tom Cable's going to be there for this year. Hugh Jackson's going to get them going, get these guys playing for him offensively, and they're going to put him in the head coaching position, which they did. And I think that it worked out for the 1 year. Obviously, it didn't work out for the long haul. Mark Davis decided to go and hire Reggie McKenzie. Reggie McKenzie decided to fire Hugh Jackson and bring in Dennis Allen. And, well, we all know how that shook out after that. Speaking of Dennis Allen, Tony Sperano became the interim after Dennis Allen got fired. And then he finished the season 3-9. Rest in peace to Tony Sperano. That obviously didn't work out very well. And then the latest, Rich Bisaccia, interim following the Gruden resignation. That clearly worked out well. They made it to the playoffs. Now, he didn't get the job, and I never thought that he was going to get the job. But for some reason, I feel a lot better about Antonio Pierce. Maybe it's just the youthful energy that he has, the enthusiasm behind the coaching position. I don't know. But it's something about Antonio Pierce, the way that these guys are playing for him, the way that they're all competing for him, the way they all want to win for him. That's what they tell us in the locker room all the time. We want to win for AP. The way they do that just makes me, think that he has a real deal shot at this job. Obviously, he became the interim after Josh McDaniels was fired on Halloween night. So I think that the Raiders have had some pretty good success with guys who've either been promoted or put into the interim position and then given an opportunity maybe to be the head coach following. But like I said, Rich Bisaccia obviously was not hired full-time. He's now in Green Bay as a special teams coach. AP has his opportunity, but they've got a pretty decent history right there, and I think that they could do some really good things. I would be excited for the opportunity for Antonio Pierce to grow with the organization. You know, they give him his first head coaching opportunity, and he runs with it, right, and holds on to that position, just kind of grows, similar to what Mike Tomlin did in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. Just grow with the team, be with them for a very long time. I would love to see the Raiders get some stability at that head coaching position and hold on to that guy for a long time. Him have some success early on and continue to breed that success with the silver and black. That would be something to pay attention to, because that's something that the Raiders haven't had in a very, very long time. One more soundbite I want you to hear as we're here in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up after this, we'll get into segment number 3, your calls and texts. But this is Tina Nguyen from Channel 13 Sports here in Las Vegas. She does a fantastic job. She does a feature called 100 Yards With, and normally she'll have like the UNLV head coach. She's talked to many different head coaches, many different players. It's a feature that she provided, she brings to the table, and I think she does a really good job. She did 100 Yards with Antonio Pierce, where they walked and talked all things ball. And here are the final 2 questions that she had for Antonio Pierce and his answers. I thought they were really good. So here is Tina Nguyen with Antonio Pierce, 100 Yards with AP.
How has being a former player helped you in terms of coaching and relating to the guys?
Oh, I know. I know when they're pissed off. I know when they're mad. I know when they don't like something. I know when they give me that Scooby-Doo look. You know, I know what all that means. And more importantly, I think they understand and I know everything they're going through off the field.
Coach, as we approach the end zone here, why are you the right fit to be the next head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders?
Well, I think first and foremost, you're talking about somebody who has a love and a passion for this organization. Grew up a Raider fan my whole life. But more importantly, I've been a football player. I was born a football player. I was born a Raider. I said that before. At the day, I'm a winner. I'm a born winner. I was a winner on the field. I'm a winner off the field. I'm a winner of men.
So I just love what he said about, you know, what it means to be a former player and how that helps him as the head coach of the Silver and Black. And then you heard the last question where she said, you know, why should you be the head coach of the Raiders? Why are you the best guy for the job? And I love his answers right there. It made a lot of sense, right? And it just shows you, again, the passion that he has for the position. I think that it would be a really good thing if he can get that job. And I'll tell you, I mean, I thought I was going to hold out for a long time and really wait to make a decision, but I just think straight up, I could tell you pretty comfortably on December 19th, I think Antonio Pierce is the right guy for the job. I really do. I think Champ Kelly is the right guy for the job as well. I think the jury's still out on the quarterback position. I definitely believe the jury's still out on the offensive coordinator. But as far as the head coach and the GM, I think those guys should get the job. I think AP and Champ Kelly should definitely get those jobs moving forward. Obviously, the Raiders are going to do all their interview process, and they're going to try to put the best person in position. But for my money, the best people in those 2 positions would be Champ Kelly as the GM and Antonio Pierce as the head coach. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts. We have that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll get into that after I tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have the many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is quick and easy. They even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and even quicker. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts. You have that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Sci-Fi Geek in the 509, calling to talk about a current player and a former player, and has an idea for both of them. Here he is, Sci-Fi Geek in the 509.
Yo, Q, this is Sci-Fi Geek from the 509. I'm calling to nominate John Jenkins for a rushing touchdown, or at least some first downs, and nominating Lincoln Kennedy as O-line coach. I don't know if any of this can go down or would go down, but I'm thinking who can stop a 300-pound rusher? You know, it's got to be something in it. And the way Lincoln Kennedy just explains everything, it's coach time. Anyway. All right. I'm out. Raiders!
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, John Jenkins, 11-year vet. The more he can do, the better, right? That's what he said in the locker room following the game on Thursday. Maybe they could put him in as a fullback and he can be a blocker down by the goal line. I think that would be kind of cool to see him in that kind of a role and maybe even handling the ball once in a while. I don't know. You don't want to get too cute, man. You only got 3 games left. You're trying to win every single one of the games, but that'd be kind of a cool way to, seal the deal against Kansas City on Christmas morning, right? The Raiders have a little bit of a lead, get down by the goal line and give it to big John Jenkins and let him try to get through there and score a touchdown. That would be kind of cool. And as far as Lincoln Kennedy as a coach, he'd be fantastic. He would, but he wants nothing to do with it. I've mentioned it to him so many times. So many people have suggested it to me. Man, does Lincoln want to coach? Does he want to coach? He said he would coach high school football, not in the NFL. So that's what he says. Now, I'll ask him later on today when I talk to him. He'll be on my radio show, Raider Nation Radio 920. He'll be on there around 3:30. I'll ask him straight up. If AP were to get the job and come to you and say, hey, man, I want you to be the offensive line coach, what would he say? I'm going to ask him that question. I know he's told me no many times, but I will pose that to him. It might be a little bit different when, a coach actually comes to you and asks you to be that guy, especially a former player that you have a lot of respect for. And I know how much he respects Antonio Pierce. So thanks for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from the judge. Says, hey, Q, it's the judge here. Just wanted to say how pleased I am with Tyree Wilson's new role and the push he's getting when he's lined up inside, making it easier for Crosby and Kuntz to get to the quarterback. I was disappointed in Wilson's efforts a few weeks ago, but man, you can see the growth now. Also, the growth of AP as the head coach is great. And Jack Jones, who? Jack Jones, Raiders. That's from the judge. And yeah, there's no doubt, man. Tyree Wilson in the middle, I think, is a game changer. I think that really helps the Raiders in a major way. And if he can continue to carve out that role and be that guy, man, you can have that 3-headed monster between Crosby, Wilson, and Kuntz. I'm good with that. I still think that the Raiders need to make another addition to the defensive line at some point, and go and get a guy in the draft, maybe somebody that they can put in as part of the rotation. They have a lot of dudes on the defensive line. You just haven't seen a whole lot from these guys throughout the course of the year. So maybe at some point you'll start to see a little bit of burn from these younger guys, but I think they need just a little bit more. But, man, the defense is cooking right now, and Tyree Wilson is looking good from the interior of that defensive line. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Sucker Free Raider. He's calling to talk about Thursday night game and the Raider Nation showing up and showing out in Allegiant Stadium. Here he is, Sucker Free Raider.
Yo, what's up, Q? It's your boy, Sucker Free Raider. That game right there last night was the perfect example of I heard a bunch of fans call in and talk about the ratio of other fans compared to ours. If last night there was only 10% Raider fans, it still would have been loud as F. I'm going to say F. Loud as F. Because we had something to cheer for. I've been there. I'm from the Bay. I fly out all the time to go to games, and it's crazy how it doesn't matter if there's 90% of the other fans. If you give us something to cheer for, we will cheer. We will be loud and proud and do our damn thing. You feel me? And last night was the epitome of it don't matter how many fans we have there or not. If you give us something to cheer for, we will be there and doing our damn thing. All right? Go Raiders.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And you're right, man. Raider Nation always does their part. They get loud regardless of the situation, regardless of how many of the opposing fans are there. Raider Nation shows up and shows out in a major way. Like I said, there's a lot of times where they're outnumbered by the opposing fans that are there. But when it's 3rd and long and they need to get loud, they'll get loud. There's no doubt. The problem is that the Raiders, to your point, haven't given the fan base enough to cheer for consistently. Now, they've done a better job this year winning games at home as opposed to the couple of other years that the stadium's been open. They've got to do that consistently. They've got to establish that home field winning. They've got to win at Allegiant Stadium more times than not, and Raider Nation will show up, and they will be super loud, just like they were on Thursdays. You could feel what it was like when the Raiders were winning and dominating, and Raider Nation wasn't sitting on the edge of their seat worried about the game. That was over at halftime, and Raider Nation had a really good time and was loud the whole time. Thanks for the call, my man. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Fitzy from New Hampshire. It says, hey, Q, has anyone asked Pierce who might be some staff members he'd consider bringing in if he gets the job? I'm still not convinced he's the man for the job, but if I knew the thought of his staff, maybe I'd be swung. Thanks, Q. Keep up the great job. Fitzy from New Hampshire. And thanks for the text. And no, not going to ask him that question right now out of respect for everyone who's still on the roster. You know, it's like you can't, and on the coaching staff, you can't ask him, hey, man, who are some coaches that you'd bring in if you do get the job? Well, I'd bring in this guy as the OC. I'd bring this guy in as the offensive line coach. He wouldn't do that. So we can't ask him that question right now. That's a question that you ask after he gets the job. Like, is there somebody that you have in mind? I mean, there's really nothing you could do about that right now because all these other coaches are on contract, and you don't want to be disrespectful like that. So I definitely wouldn't ask that question. That's something for after the season, once, decisions start to get made and you can start to see if, the OC doesn't come back or the offensive line coach doesn't come back or whatever the case may be, special teams, whoever it is, right? I think the defensive coordinator, there's no doubt Patrick Graham will come back. I think there's a question on the OC. I think the offensive line coach has actually done a pretty good job. Special teams has done a really good job. A.J. Cole's been kicking out of his mind. So I don't know how many coaches he'd change, but LeVar Arrington said there was 3 guys that he was focusing on bringing in that if he brought them in, that would be a game changer. So I don't know who that is, and we won't find out till later on if we find out at all. But no, nobody's asked that question as of right now. Thanks for the text, though. I do appreciate you. Got one more call. This one we'll take from Jordan in Oregon, a frequent caller of the show. He's calling to talk about some players that I've talked about over the years that I've either pounded the table for or mentioned as players that I thought were really good, and has a question about some upcoming talent. Here he is, Jordan in Oregon.
Hey, what's going on, Q? Jordan in Oregon, calling in here. Hey, I just wanted to chime in after listening to your podcast, and definitely got me thinking, Q. I hear you talking about our team and just, kind of the situation of where this team could be. And obviously, I totally agree with you on some of these takes, like the Steeler game and whatnot. Like, we could have a game or two, a few of these games. You even pointed out the Bears or whatever with their young kid that we probably should have had that as a dub. But I always point this out anytime I hear that point, is that could be true, but it's also usually the case with all 31 other teams, is that there's usually a game or two, possibly even 3, that you could kind of look at and go, wow, if it wasn't for that, fumble, or it wasn't for that missed field goal at the end or whatever. Which is not trying to make me, be like Debbie Downer or whatever. I just wanted to point that out so we're all keeping that in mind as well. But hey, man, I wanted to call, and I think I'd had like a similar call last year around this time, was in regards to some guys that I've noticed since I've been listening to your pod for, 3-4 years here now, that you kind of identified and that have panned out. And they've been guys you've pounded the table for and guys that are dogs. And so I'm going to lay them out. You knew about Mahomes. It kind of sounds like that's before you were rocking the pod with Raider Nation, but you weren't excited when they got him. Let's put it that way. And I never can't vouch that you were pounding the table for the Raiders to take him, but you definitely made it clear that you knew it wasn't good news when they got that guy. So you must have known something about him. Then for me, it's Josh Jacobs. I knew about Josh Jacobs, but I didn't know a lot about him. I knew he had a great national championship and saw some of what he did at Alabama. Well, you came straight out when we had those 3 first-round picks, and he was literally one of the main guys you were pounding the table for. And I know some of it you've talked about was the interviews you have with him, and you could already tell he had a tough mindset, just how he came up. And so I always will remember that, man. It's like that was a hell of a call on that one. And then there's Jalen Hurts. I was totally against that when you were pounding the table for Hurts, and it was when Carr was kind of in the midst of the Gruden situation and just was having some, okay play, probably his top play he's ever had. I was thinking, why are we wanting to waste capital on Hurts? Well, here we are again, man. You're right on that one too. And so this call isn't just to pump you up, Q's right about everything, but if you could identify one guy, I don't want a list or make you have to think of a list, but who would that be in this year? Would it be like a Jaden Daniels? I've already heard you kind of slipping his name in a bit. Let me know, man. Peace.
Thank you so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, you're right, man. I've hit on some players. I've also got plenty wrong, right? I mean, we all do, right? There's certain players that you look at and you're like, yeah, that's going to be a game changer. That's going to be a player right there. And you're right. Josh Jacobs was the guy that I pounded the table for the jump. I talked about Jalen Hurts, and obviously, the Raiders didn't go in that direction, but he's worked out pretty well. But there's other guys that I've pounded the table for. Emmanuel Forbes is the latest one, right? I liked him a lot coming out of Mississippi State. Washington got him. They've benched him. Right, he hasn't been that guy. Now, Tariq Woolen, the cornerback from the Seahawks, 5th-round pick out of UTSA a year ago. I also said that was a really good player. He turned out to be a good player. I know he's been up and down this year for Seattle, but he was a really good one. So I've picked a few. I've gotten a few right, but like I said, I've gotten more wrong as well. As far as guys that I like, I'll give you 2. I'll give you a quarterback, Jayden Daniels. You mentioned him. I've said him before. Jayden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner out of LSU by way of Arizona State. I think he'd just be a dynamic quarterback. You look at the AFC, and I think you've got to have that dude to compete with all the guys that are in the AFC. Just look at the AFC West. You got Herbert, you got Mahomes, you got Russell Wilson's playing better, right? But if you look at the body of work in the AFC, you got Tua in Miami. You've got Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, right? I mean, you got Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. I don't know if he's ever going to be that guy again, but he's still a threat to be really good. Let's see. You got Josh Allen in Buffalo, right? I mean, there's arms. Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Don't want to forget him, right? He very easily could end up being the MVP of the league for all we know. His team's the only team that's punched their ticket to the playoffs in the AFC as of right now. But there's a lot of talented quarterbacks in the AFC conference. I think Jayden Daniels would give the Raiders that dynamic dude that can compete with the guys that I just mentioned and then some. As far as other guys, I got to give you at least one Bama guy, right? I'm a Bama dude through and through. I say it all the time. I love watching Alabama football. I love trying to scout Alabama football and seeing what guy I would like to see the Raiders go get. Quinnen Williams was another guy I wanted the Raiders to go get when they got Cleve Farrell. He didn't make it to the Raiders at number 4. They actually had a beeline on him. Josh Jacobs has said that they both thought that they were going to get drafted by the Raiders because the Raiders had showed interest in both Quinnen Williams and Josh Jacobs. And unfortunately for the Raiders, Quinnen Williams got selected one pick before the Silver and Black got to get up to the podium. So the Jets got Quinnen and the Raiders got Cleve Farrell. And, well, we all know how that worked out. But let me go ahead and give you my one Alabama guy, and then we'll wrap it up. And I always talk about DBs. DBs win games. Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback. He's a big-time player, right? And I like the cornerbacks that the Raiders have, but I do think that they need to have another dude, another dog, and he is that guy. And I watch him all the time, so I just really like the fact that he could play zone, he could play man, he's a willing tackler, he's a tough dude. He's similar to kind of to Jack Jones, where he's a tough guy, similar to Nate Hobbs too, has some toughness. I like that. I think that that's important. But just going back and looking at some of the draft, the recap of him and the summary of him, exhibits exceptional awareness in zone coverage, consistently reading and reacting to the quarterback and unfolding plays. Boasts impressive length, leveraging it to disrupt passes and intimidate receivers with his extended reach. Skilled in bump and run, utilizing foot quickness and hip fluidity to mirror and challenge receivers instantly. Demonstrates remarkable ball skills, particularly when facing the quarterback, frequently contesting and disrupting pass attempts effectively. He's got a couple career interceptions there at Alabama. I wouldn't mind seeing him added to the Raiders secondary. Just continue to bolster that defense that I think is coming along really well, but that'll give some versatility to Patrick Graham and that unit. Would like to see that. I'm really pulling for Jack Jones. I really am. I hope that he ends up becoming a diamond in the rough and the Raiders can use him long term. Nate Hobbs continue to develop. I think Amik Robertson has earned his role. I don't think there should be any question each and every year if he's going to make the roster. I think he's earned that. I hope that they show him that what he means to the team and solidifies his spot. Marcus Epps and Trayvon Merrick on the back end. They still have Chris Smith. And, of course, Jacorian Bennett's a guy that they drafted last year, and he's got still to develop. But it's a pretty salty secondary in cornerback room. A lot of young dudes that they can grow off and don't have to worry about going and signing free agents like a Marcus Peters like they did this past year. And, obviously, that didn't work out. He got one interception with the team, a pick six, and then he got released just because of, lack of effort. So you know how that goes. But that's what I got time for. Jordan, thanks for the call. It's always great to hear from you. I still got a text from Assassin's Ghost. Got a couple calls that we'll get to on tomorrow's show. We'll have more news and notes, and we'll have plenty of conversation here as well on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until Wednesday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.